With Donald Trump's election victory, the United States foreign policy stands at a crossroads. As Israeli attacks on Lebanon escalate and tensions rise in the Middle East, Trump's promises of swift resolution are put to the test. His bold, transactional approach to global crisis, from Russia and Ukraine to NATO and Iran, raises the question: will his second term reshape international diplomacy or falter under new challenges? Welcome to In Focus. Trump has won the United States election, but the Israeli attacks on Lebanon still continued. The deaths and casualties also haven't stopped, with the confrontation between the occupation forces and Hezbollah continuing to escalate. This ongoing escalation poses questions about Trump's promises to end the war in Lebanon. Are they just electoral promises, or does he have a viable plan? The New York Times has reported that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing Israeli government believes that a Trump administration would allow Israel to end its war on favorable terms. It added that an overwhelming majority of Jewish Israelis view Trump as a favorable option for Israeli interests than Kamala Harris. They assume Trump would take a more lenient approach towards Israel than the Biden administration, which has widely supported Israel's war on Gaza, but has also criticized the humanitarian aspects of it, including the high civilian death toll. According to the report, Netanyahu may now feel emboldened by the prospect of a more amenable US president, as he continues to insist on total victory in Israel's war and engages in a high-wire exchange of blows with his arch-enemy, Iran. Providing more analysis regarding the current updates about the latest escalations in Lebanon, joining us from Lebanon is Sirouj Abi Khan, a political researcher and writer and director of the MEC Affairs Center for Political Studies. A very warm welcome, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you with us on our show. Mr. Abi Khan, how does Netanyahu see Trump's victory?
Good afternoon, good evening to you and reviewers. Netanyahu still hopes and work on winning Trump through the Zionist lobbies in America, hoping to eradicate the pressures from the Democrats or the tensions between him and Biden regarding the prolonged war in Gaza or in Lebanon. This is about the relation between Netanyahu and Trump. Also, the dismissal of Gallant from the Ministry of Defense before the result coming out was an evidence of the results.
It was during the election, sir. It was not before the results. It was during the election. He kept he made sure that the U.S. administration is very busy doing something very important, and then he fired and sacked Yoav Gallant.
There were four reasons mentioned by Netanyahu why he sacked Gallant. ولكن Netanyahu wanted to remove all the pressures between the handover of the presidency from now till January until the elected president to take office. During that period, he doesn't want to have any American pressure from the US, either through the Minister of the Defense, when he was always working to calm down the situation.
Sir,
and to come
Netanyahu
up with
doesn't
a
want any
Democrat.
kind of pressure from anywhere. He just wants to continue escalating and making atrocities and genocides everywhere. What are the possible effects of Trump's victory on the battlefield and the prospects for a political settlement in Lebanon?
The matter is politically than militarily. Military, there is an agreement between American and Israel, and a defense and agreement between the two countries, and it's still
Military,
effective.
sir, sorry to interrupt you. You mean military aid?
Exactly. The military aid will continue, in particular that Trump is still the ceasefire or the end in the war is provided by the victory on Gaza. So they should decide to what significant the end of the war, but either in the same situation we've listened in the words of Khamenei, Alamin al-Ama, the Secretary General. So it is an evidence that the war is to continue, and we hope that the resistance and the military aid to Israel will continue as long as the war is still to continue.
Okay, perfect, sir. If there is a military agreement that the United States will continue aiding Israel with military aid, then, sir, what are the possible effects of Trump's victory on the battlefield and the prospects for a political settlement in Lebanon?
We know the Trump and his situations politically in the election that he is against war, but he is actually there is two big wars either in Ukraine or in the region. It is hopeful from him, but he inherited the war and never decided. There is repercussions before the end of the war. That's why we say the 2 months and might last till the next year. It will be difficult for the Lebanese people. And I think that the possibilities of Trump will be Ukraine before Lebanon and before the situation in the region, unless Israel started to lose, if there is a hope for that, and they are concerned about the path of the war, so that Trump will enter. But we think that the possibility of that the Lebanese role will come afterwards.
Okay, sir, if your narrative is this and you see and what you're saying, while campaigning, Trump had promised to end the war and suffering in Lebanon as soon as possible. Are they just promises, or does he have a workable plan or was he just giving campaigning promises to win and be the United States president? Because you say at the end of the day there is a military agreement that won't be changed under any circumstances.
Right. Trump has a project not only for Lebanon and the United States cannot lay out a big project for only Lebanon. Trump will continue Abraham agreement with the Gulf countries and then will turn back to the possibility of the two-state solution in Palestine and added the agreement between the US and the Gulf countries militarily to be advanced other than the previous one, to be the Japanese-Korean problems with the US. Hence, Trump has to first to prove that the United States is capable to silence the Iranian
Okay, sir, because I have to end up and wrap up this segment now. Are you optimistic that a new Trump administration will lead the region into a better situation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I'll leave it there. And thank you. This was Serouj Abikian, a political researcher and writer from Beirut. Thank you, sir, for your valuable insights and informative knowledge. With Donald Trump's victory, U.S. foreign policy is on the brink of a seismic shift from his approach to the Russian-Ukraine conflict and Middle East tensions to the future of NATO, China relations, and the fate of Iran nuclear deal. Trump's second term promises dramatic changes. Will his bold transitional style rewrite the rules of global diplomacy?
We can fix every single problem our country faces and lead America, and indeed the whole world. USA! This is a magnificent victory for the American people. Promises made, promises kept. We're going to keep our promises. Nothing will stop me from keeping my word to you, the people. We will make America safe, strong, prosperous, powerful, and free again.
Donald Trump's remarkable political comeback secures him a second non-consecutive presidential term, marking a historic shift in U.S. politics. His appeal transcended transitional boundaries, gaining support from diverse voter bases, disillusioned with the status quo. The New York Times has reported that Trump's victory signals a rejection of the Democratic establishment, especially Vice President Kamala Harris. Domestically, his policies on immigration, tariffs, and deregulation promises economic turbulence. Globally, his America First stance raises concern about climate change, NATO, and international trade, while creating opportunities for rivals like China. Markets reacted positively, though experts warn his approach could rise the global economy. And providing more analysis regarding the U.S. foreign relations, joining us from Washington, Justin Thomas Russell, the Principal Director of the New York Center for Foreign Affairs Policy. Welcome, sir, and welcome to your show. Sir, how might Trump's closer ties with Putin and his promise to end the Russian-Ukraine conflict within 24 hours reshape U.S.-Russia relations and the war's trajectory compared to Biden's approach?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me again. The approach that Donald Trump is going to have regarding Russia is there's no question historically in Trump's first term that there was a close bond between him and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The idea that Donald Trump is going to come in and solve the Russian question within 24 hours is highly unlikely. What I do believe that in his mind, and it also depends on what his foreign advisors and who he's counting on for foreign advice, uh, he's going to have to be looking at some sort of reality without selling out strategically either our NATO partners, especially, but also our alliances in the Baltics, our alliance with Ukraine. And it's going to be a very, very delicate line he has to walk without just kowtowing to Vladimir Putin, which is a fear amongst our allies.
So, with the ongoing war in Gaza and Lebanon, how might Trump reframe U.S. involvement in the Middle East? And will he continue supporting Israel, as usual, of course, or shift his priorities this time for a change?
Well, there's no question that Donald Trump has a close bond with Benjamin Netanyahu. In fact, I've stated several times that I think that part of the issue of the escalation in Gaza was basically enabled by the relationship that Netanyahu had with Trump during Trump's first term. He expanded into the West Bank, he expanded his presence into Gaza, and I think that kind of lit a fuse that was basically unrevocable. Let me be clear that, in large part, the response to and what has caused the Gaza question was the horrific offense of October 7th last year. But that being said, I think that President Joe Biden and his foreign affairs team, particularly Secretary Tony Blinken, has been very proactive in trying to find a quick solution to mitigate the humanitarian crisis and kind of limit the operation that's happening in Gaza. And now that it's expanded into Lebanon, now that there's a potential with a back and forth between Tehran and Tel Aviv, Donald Trump, I think, is going to almost enable Benjamin Netanyahu to do as he pleases, and with no advisors like Gallant there to kind of keep things in check. It's going to be a very
Mr. Russell,
interesting
can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Trump promised during his campaign that there's going to be de-escalation with regards to Lebanon and Gaza and what's happening in the Middle East. Are they just electoral promises, or does he have a viable plan?
Well, from my viewpoint, I don't think Donald Trump has a viable plan regarding the Gaza question at all. And to think that he's going to be able to enable high-scale negotiations between now and when he's inaugurated in January is highly unlikely. The baseline here is that, Benjamin Netanyahu has been counting on Donald Trump to ascend back. Well, he's been expecting Donald Trump and hoping that Donald Trump would return to the White House and the Oval Office, giving him a little bit more leeway to conduct his operation in the Middle East the way he sees fit, whereas a Kamala Harris would have put more pressure on minimizing the military operations. The Donald Trump factor here is key for Benjamin Netanyahu. The question is the Israeli people going to continue? We're seeing a lot of buzz and a lot of unrest happening in Israel regarding this. They still don't have the hostages out. Donald Trump says he wants to get the Americans and the hostages
your
out.
concern is narrative is the Israeli people and the detainees. It's not about the Gazans or what's happening there or the atrocities and genocides there. So you're okay with it?
Hold on. No, hold on. There are many succinct parts in analyzing the
part
Gaza
of what,
question.
sir? Part of civilians and children and women?
Hold on. I don't want you putting words in my mouth on this. I have been very clear.
I was just asking you. I'm not putting any words in your mouth, sir.
Okay. I understand, but what I am saying is that on one side, when you ask about the Trump effect, it focuses on the Trump effect and the relationship with Netanyahu. Whereas the Biden effect, which has been very minimizing and mitigating an expanding humanitarian crisis. Tony Blinken and Secretary Austin and Jake Sullivan and the president himself has been very clear with Tel Aviv that they have to minimize and stop the killing of civilians and minimize the impact
So you're with
on
the stop
civilian
of killing
infrastructure.
civilians, sir. You're not against it.
Am I against it? Of course I'm against the killing of civilians. I have been very, very open about my position on the situation in Gaza. I have been very clear and continue to be clear that the continuation of any further death, the continuation of any escalation in the humanitarian crisis that is continuing in Gaza, in southern Lebanon, is absolutely is reprehensible and needs to be addressed and addressed immediately. That's a similar message that this administration, in the Biden administration, has been putting forward routinely in its dialogue with Tel Aviv.
Okay, sir, thank you for your narrative on this issue. Now we move to another foreign issue with regards to Trump. How will Trump's stance on sanctions and unpredictable foreign policy affect U.S. relations with Iran and Russia? And what's his approach to the Iran nuclear deal and North Korea?
Well, we can start with Russia first. The sanctions against Russia.
He said in 24 hours he's going to end the war, sir.
Yeah. I mean, that's not going to happen. I mean, basically any sort of negotiation is going to be delicate. He's not going to end the war
As
in
the president of
24.
the United States, he said that.
Well, he said a lot of things that have not come to fruition. We have to take what Donald Trump says with a grain of salt. What I will say is that, depending on who he brings in as his key national security advisors, if you look at a Rick Grenell, who has extensive experience in working with NATO, working as the former ambassador to Germany. He was a close national security advisor to Donald Trump in his first administration. He's a very practical diplomat and a very smart and savvy strategic thinker. He could be very helpful in getting the Russian invasion of Ukraine mitigated very rapidly, but I don't think it'll be in 24 hours. If you're talking about Iran,
he said so, sir.
Iran. I'm sorry.
Sorry, he said so.
Well, I mean, again, when you talk about what Donald Trump says and what actually happens, there's a lot of political rhetoric that happens coming out of Donald Trump. The reality is, how does this thing get ended in Ukraine, and how do we minimize the continued loss of life on both the Ukrainian and the needless loss of life of Russian soldiers? It's just insane. This is, again, something that was started by Putin, who has a very close relationship to Donald Trump. And the reality is that our NATO partners get very nervous with that close relationship between the two, because that puts, possibly in the eyes of our NATO allies and our Eastern European leader friends, that puts them possibly at risk. This is not going to end in 24 hours, but I believe that there will be pressure on both sides to come to the negotiation table.
Hopefully, sir. Sir, Trump has promised to bring the U.S.-China trade war back. How do you foresee this impacting not just the United States-China relations, but the broader globe?
Talking about tariffs, and we start talking about a trade war with China. I've been very, very vocal about a position that we've taken in the idea of that there is now a mutually assured economic destruction situation going on between Beijing and Washington. Not unlike the mutually assured destruction theory of the Cold War, which involved the Soviet Union and the United States, a global thermonuclear war. There's an economic mutually assured destruction that's in play here with China. What we've seen is the U.S. has become so dependent on China in the just-in-time logistics system that we have here that we expect $300 flat screen TVs. We expect $80 pieces of furniture. We expect $20 clothing. when that is manufactured and produced and shipped from China to the United States. Our economy is based on that, and we've become, quite frankly, dependent.
So, sir,
almost.
The relationship has to be very strong.
I'm sorry?
Sir, because I have to wrap up this episode. Thank you very much for your insight. And as, of course, the U.S. foreign policy is on the brink of a seismic shift, we thank you very much, Justin Thomas Russell, the Principal Director of the New York Center for Foreign Policy Affairs. Thank you for your insights and informative knowledge, and thank you very much for being with us on the show today. That wraps up our episode today for In Focus. Remember to stay updated by following Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Qnews EG for the latest developments. Thank you very much for watching.